It's the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast with Tony Rourke and Kevin O'Flaherty.
SeizeYourBusiness.com, making you money. Share it on Facebook, share it on LinkedIn, Twitter, our blogs, YouTube videos. Listen to our podcast, getting so hot that it's burning up the stereo.
Welcome to the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast, coming to you from our speakeasy in lovely downtown Downers Grove. Our guest today is Scott Mathis, a local business consultant. Our hosts are Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law and myself, Tony Rourke from ADR Business Resource Group. If you find the podcast helpful, or if you just want to help us out, we would appreciate it if you would review us on iTunes and or share our podcast on social media. So without further ado, I'll just hand this off to Kevin and we'll get going.
Thanks for being with us today, Scott. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience in business? I know you've had a couple different businesses in your life. Tell me a little bit about what you've done.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's interesting to look back and think about my past, and it's probably been 15, 20 years since I've worked for anybody, and I've had different businesses myself, from LAN parties back in the day when you'd have people bring their computers in the towers and drag them in and set them up by computer monitors, and now you could do it all on your tablet. I had jewelry stores for a while and construction companies and a bunch of different stuff, and I've had great successes and miserable failures, and I think you have to get the failures behind you to be successful. So
what are some of the things you've learned from your failures in business?
To keep trying and keep moving forward. The difference in success and failure is to keep trying. The successful people do, and the other guys just quit before they find it.
What if you could tell yourself, a couple pieces of wisdom?
Okay.
Go back and tell yourself some things.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you talked about, like when you first started doing the podcast and we were going to do it, but I was sick, was what are the 5 biggest lessons you learned in business? And we can just segue into that if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
And one of those that I wrote down was being the smartest person in the room doesn't necessarily make you smart. And from that, it's kind of an idea of you need to seek good advice from good people that have had successes and find a mentor. Otherwise, you're not going to find success. So if you're the guy in the room that everybody comes to for advice, you probably need to find some new friends. Otherwise, you're not going to gain any knowledge from anybody else.
That's something I went through personally. Last summer I thought that I had lightning in a bottle with my business, and I had never taken it past the point that I needed to take it. So growing to the next stage of growth, I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have anyone in my life that could really give me advice on how to take it to that next level of growth. And that's when you and I started talking, and you helped me, transform my business and systematize things. And you were kind of a mentor in that department because you'd seen things and been there before.
It's really hard in the beginning to even know, for most entrepreneurs that are starting, if it's their first endeavor, especially, they've never done this before, there's no good literature or book out there. And so you don't even know what question to ask or who to ask it. If you're looking to do taxes or whatever, if you've never done that, you don't even know an accountant to talk to. So if you find somebody that's already been there and maybe weeded through the bad guys and kept some of the good guys in their, repertoire that they could share with you. But I've always just thought it's funny. People get in a room and they'll be like, look what I'm doing. And they think they're that smart guy. And they may be the smartest one, but it doesn't give them, any real leverage. And the other end that I shared with Tony earlier, I find interesting that people in the same adage say that, great minds think alike. Well, if that's the case, then so do buffoons. And, you need to make sure that you need to make sure which one you are and make sure you're getting good advice. Because just because people believe in you is another thing that I kind of had with that particular one. The amount of people that believe in you and your idea doesn't necessarily correlate to the amount of success you'll have. If your mother thinks it's a great idea, that's not necessarily who you need to vet it with to find out if you're going to be successful.
Well, Scott, how do you have that conversation with somebody, with you being more of that business consultant, working with that guy or that person one-on-one? How do you basically look at them and say, dude, you're smart, but not the smart you think you are?
Right.
How do you do that? And then what tips can you give a person to ask themselves to realize that they are trying to be a little too smart for their own good, and maybe they need to get help?
And a lot of the things, and when I was helping Kevin's a great attorney, but that's what he knows at this point the most. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great marketing as it relates to internet wise. And I'm not necessarily that guy. I would outsource that and have somebody help me that's smarter than me at that particular one. But in the beginning, when you talk to somebody about that, it is a delicate, you have to have and I'm from the South, as you know, but a come to Jesus moment where they have to break through that point and realize that, you're not the best person to be in that position. And I know Kevin and I both read E-Myth, and it goes into, working on your business, not in your or as an employee, you can't be working in the business. You'll lose sight of the big picture. And if you're not standing back looking at it. So one example that was an interesting of how you get people to see that, I was doing a consulting thing for EGL Logistics, and we were doing Nike Cell Sample, and it was all these little boxes, and they're moving on conveyors, and some people are moving them, and it's not efficient and all this stuff. And they had a skyjack, which is one of those platform lifts that you see construction guys work. They go straight up. And I took the two guys that had retained me to do it, and I took them out to the middle of the floor. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I drove this thing up. We got on it, and they're wearing their suits, and we're sitting there, and we jacked this thing up 40 foot in the air, and we looked down, and I pointed out to them, and then it's like ants moving at that point. And if you could see the process from, and you can't always do that, but from above, as if you're looking down at it and see where the hesitations are. And I'm like, that's where I want to put a conveyor, because it was going to be an expensive addition. I want to put a conveyor here so that these guys are not picking up this individual box and carrying it down the way. And they could see from up there when they're looking down on their business. And that was a unique opportunity to be able to do that this is not good. And after that, to get them to try something new wasn't that hard.
Okay, so two things I got out of that. First of all, you don't care about conflict, obviously. You got to have that conflict in order. I can't even imagine the kind of conflicts you guys had to come deal with, but you got to have that uncomfortable, conflicting conversation before you can actually break through to anything good or bad. I mean, that's just a reality. And then the other thing I heard, you have to be able to be willing to take a 20,000 foot view of everything. Yeah. And not just kind of look at it from the ground, but just kind of look at it from above. Right. Use your imagination. Yeah. And that example was very literal, but you figuratively have to step outside of it to see it. And if you are the entrepreneur and you've built it and it's your baby and you've spent 3 years and you're still failing, you really don't want to hear somebody say, you're not doing this great. And they don't want to, they have a perspective that is not good for backing up and looking at an overall picture. So you really have to work with them to get them to step back. And I do a lot of exercises. One of the first things Kevin and I did was a big picture scenario breakdown. We went through the big entrepreneurial dream, what he wants to do, where he sees himself. And if you start working through that and get them to fill it out with participation, they kind of get to those conclusions on their own. On their own. Okay. And if they don't, I just won't work with them. There's that conflict again.
And the conflict is really scary when you're actually working in your business. When you're taking the 10,000 foot view, it becomes less scary. But one of the things that, Scott, you helped me out with was seeing, okay, well, maybe I don't have the right people in the right seats here. When I'm working in my business, I'm really attached to not having the difficult conversations with those people, because that's going to create a lot of work for me personally. Right. If I can step back and have the right people in the right seats, then the business basically runs itself with a few tweaks from me. I can make those tough decisions without worrying about the personal conflict, because I'm not as absorbed in that on a day-to-day business basis, and it doesn't interrupt my business in the same way it would if I'm, just behind the desk practicing law every day and I need to get a new office manager, and now suddenly I'm the office manager again. Right.
And I think all entrepreneurs at some level deal with the fear of letting somebody go, and they're like, oh, I can't let that guy go, because then who's going to do this? And I'm of the adage, and you know this, that if you think they need to be fired, you probably should have done it 2 weeks ago. And if you get to that point, it's too late. And you need to find the right people to put in the right seats in the beginning that are capable and competent of doing the job, and not try to fit a job description to that person. But the firing part, people are very hesitant as an entrepreneur, because they see that fear that I'm going to have to, now I'm already doing this and I'm running ragged. The truth is they're probably not working if you're to the point where it's time to possibly let them go. They're probably not doing that much, and they're hiding their day and they're going about business looking busy. And the quicker you can do it, the quicker you move to the next level. And you can't do it without eliminating the pieces that don't fit. But everybody's scared of that. It's terrifying. I mean, I'm going to have to work more now. I'm going to, instead of 80 hours, now I'm going to do 100. Where are they at? I can't see my kids. I can't,
How did you go about finding your mentors? Because that's a difficult thing, to vet a mentor and determine who you're going to let into your life to trust and give advice to you.
it is a really difficult process. And the more you do and the better mentors you have, the harder it is to find the next level mentor. And I would love to, if anybody's out there listening and you want to mentor me on things, please come see me, because I need a new next level, next step. I've done for probably 7-8 years and you're familiar with this, as are you, a Monday night networking tool where we get together and hang out and meals, drinks, whatever anybody wants. And we just talk about life. There's no curriculum, there's no anything. And in that, you can really find some good friends, and everybody kind of finds more friends. But networking is what I would say, is being out there in the public, in the eyes of, and seeing people and them seeing you. And then connections just come naturally if you see enough people at some point.
You used to be a member of something called an EO group.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is and whether you found it helpful?
It was very helpful. EO is a Chicago chapter is EO Chicago, and they have a accelerator program that's a feeder group for EO, and it's a great program for starting businesses if you get to a certain level, and they build those relationships that you're talking about. And I did find some great mentors there. They it's an interesting thing. They have a specific curriculum 4 times a year for the accelerator program. So if you're a new business, you might look into it. It's not inexpensive, but it's well worth the best value I've ever gotten out of any entrepreneur or business group I've ever been in. And they do People Day, they do Money Day, and they have 4 different big picture things within your business they get together and do. And then with that, you meet monthly with a mentor that is set up to be that, with a group of 4 or 5 people that are, and the whole goal is to try to get you to a certain point so that you can go into the next step of your business. And the curriculum, the classes, and the connections you made are priceless.
The thing I've always struggled with in that department is I know a ton of people who are business coaches, and I like them, they're good people. And I know a ton of people that are willing to help me, outsource certain aspects of my business. The struggle I have is that a lot of times these people will say, yeah, work with me. It's only a $5,000 retainer, or it's a $10,000 retainer. And before I can know whether they're going to give me good advice or not, or whether it's going to be worthwhile, I have to make that down payment. And it's tough it's always been tough for me to take that plunge to evaluate whether this is, stump water someone's selling me,
right, or
whether they're actually going to be helpful to me.
Stump water.
Can I take credit for stump water? Go ahead.
Southern reference.
Well, the reason I was willing to start working with you was, we'd been friends first. We met at that Monday night group. Well, we didn't meet there, but we got to talking about business.
We got to know each other better.
And you didn't ask for like a big retainer. It was like, yeah, I'll help you out, hourly rate. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it was less of an upfront investment. But I think if, I had met you and you came up to me and said, yeah, I'll help you out. Same person, maybe you're even friends, but I'll charge you $5,000 up front to do discovery about your business.
And it's such a hard line. Would you pay that now, knowing what I helped you do?
Sure.
I always struggle with it too. How do you build credibility with somebody? It's a tough struggle, because everybody's selling something. If they're networking, if they're doing it, everybody's selling something, and you don't know if it's legitimate till afterwards. I mean,
that's a question of value, though, isn't it?
It is a question of value.
It's always been a question of value.
Yeah.
I know one of the things that you and I had talked about, Scott, was when you were first starting to work with Kevin, because of what I do with my hourly billing in IT world, right, you were asking me how much I charge. Yeah. Once I told you, you kind of had that look on your face of, well, I can't charge them that.
It's hard to value that.
It's real hard.
And cost is only, it's only an issue in the absence of value. If there's value there, people will pay. If I came to you tomorrow and I could guarantee that I'd get your business $1 million in the next month, would you give me $200,000?
Sure.
Okay. Who wouldn't? How do you prove that, and then sometimes with helping somebody with their business processes and breaking it down to the lowest common denominator, and then separating that into, and your best efforts sometimes are just not good enough. And that was one of the other lessons that I came up with, that sometimes your best, what if I did that and failed? Well, that's what people are afraid of. And it could happen. What if you don't listen to me? What if it's just not a good product in the end? It's nothing you're doing wrong. It's just, nobody wants to dial up rotary phones anymore, and you're trying to sell those. Well, that's just dumb. You can't.
No value.
No value. Exactly. And so I try to spend time in the beginning helping people with some free, just some tokens of here's this, like that big dream thing. We spent there was no charge for that. And it's kind of like you do as a lawyer, an initial consultation. We'll sit down, talk, and see if we could make a good fit.
I think the other thing with doing value is you got to be willing to have conversations about whatever your offering is, without worrying about the dollar amount attached to it. It's kind of like,
yes,
in many days it comes off as free advice, and it is. Oh well, next.
Exactly. And you can't give away everything, but there's something usually you can give away as a peace offering to start the ball rolling, to build a relationship. The best way to do it is, if you're a small business with any kind of, whether you're selling, no matter what you're selling, is referrals. And because then people are saying, I think Tony is a great guy at A, B, or C. I want him to help you if you'll allow it. And then there's the trust. They trust him, and I'm a peripheral of that. Then it seems to be good.
Good.
You say being the smartest person in the room doesn't make you smart, and you don't want to take advice from your mom as to whether your business is going to succeed necessarily, unless your mom is qualified to give you that advice. What do you do to vet out a business idea in order to determine whether it's going to make sense? Who do you just get a mentor and then vet it through them, or what's the plan there?
Well, small business entrepreneurs that have a small business, a lot of times will get lost in trying to do everything, and they're not good at that. And that carries back to the big picture, and in the same way, in the beginning of an idea, it's easier to vet people out than it is in. Don't ask divorced people for relationship advice. Don't ask broke people for financial advice. It goes back to that. If they're not qualified, how to qualify them is a more difficult step. And I like referrals in the same way. So if I didn't know you and I was looking for a lawyer, I would go to all my friends and go, hey, I want to be, I want a good attorney for whatever I'm doing. It's finding a mentor is the best way to do that, because they have taken those steps and they have their little Rolodex of people a lot of times that's a very difficult question to answer, but it's the most important. If you have people that that have been there and done that, and they're your mentor, you can go to them and say, what are the questions that I need to ask? And if you're selling a widget and you have a great idea for a product, it's this thing and it's going to revolutionize the world, you don't know are you going to brand it? Or are you going to market it? Or are you going to use licensing? You're going to put Mickey's head on it, which anything will sell, even if it's a bad idea, if you can license Mickey's head for a little while. Are those good ideas? And it's market research, and there are people out there that do just that and specific things in it. And so if you can do the market research and find out if it's a good idea, like rotary phones, it would take you 10 minutes to, ixnay that. But it's difficult. Finding the mentor is the key to success in anything, because at least they know the question to ask.
So it sounds like there's 3 different types of people that can help you out in this department. There's the people that you outsource stuff to, like Tony, if I want to outsource my internet marketing.
Right.
It's someone who does that for a living, and you pay them to do that. There's a paid, business coach or an EO group that you pay into, and their job is to help you with the big picture of the business. And then there's just people that you become friends with that have been down that path before, that can, may or may not want to invest a ton of time helping you, but will at least, be someone that you can be a sounding board off of, right?
Right. And back to the groups for a minute, it's interesting. A lot of times, and that was on my list of the 5 things that were the biggest lessons, and we're going to get to all of them. I didn't know if we'd have that time.
I know,
we're touching on all of them. They all tied together really closely. It was a lot of times the big deal, that great opportunity comes to you before you're ready. And the good end, whether you get them through leads groups or whether you get them through entrepreneur groups or whatever, the big thing about mentors is that they failed, if they're any good at all. And like I said, I've had huge failures. I've had huge successes. The first commercial building I ever bought was in Corinth, Mississippi. And it has this cool old front and everything. And it's rotten on the top. And me and a couple of guys are taking out like wooden pieces and support and everything. All of a sudden a windstorm came through town. for whatever reason, and I hadn't gotten completely secured the front brick wall, which is like 2 feet thick and everything. And it did a little of this, and it fell into the street and shattered everywhere. There's thousands of bricks in the street.
Man.
That's a failure. But now I know to secure the front first. And you have to have had those failures to be able to know the right way to set things up. And if you can find the mentor in your field, an EO group was a great way to do it. And personal friends and that network and everything, you're spot on. They've failed, and they need to tell you why, and then they know the questions to ask to find the success faster.
One thing that's difficult is, and you touched on this before, as you move into a particular, let's say, difficulty level, if you think of business as a video game and you're on on a certain level
Sure.
of your business, you're moving with a lot of people that are also in that level.
Yeah.
Starting to move with people that are in the next couple levels is where it becomes difficult.
And everybody's at different levels.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with your business, you're at one level, and then you have to throttle your level up and down depending on who
Whether
you're
you're
having to deal with
right
at that moment. So
Yeah.
it gets really complex.
The struggle is, reaching out to people that are in that next level and bringing them into your circle, and because it's easy to find
finding
people on
them.
your level, right?
Yeah.
And finding people that are willing to,
Because you're probably doing the same stuff that doesn't work, and you haven't figured out how yet to be successful to step to the next game. And Tony Robbins said, and I always liked it. He said, it's not lonely at the top; it's just less crowded. And so we're not allowed at whatever level you're at. You're not allowed until you've failed almost and then found success. You're not allowed to that next tier most of the time because they already know what they're doing.
Right.
And
one thing that I found helpful is putting together a group of collaborators on your level, the people
Yeah.
that you're friends with. That's what your Monday night
Yep.
group was.
Right.
People that aren't necessarily more advanced than you, but at least you can sound off with people that are struggling with the same issues you are.
right.
And in the absence of someone that's willing to take your hand and guide you up, like pull you up to the next level, that's a good temporary solution.
And you talk about sounding board. It's so valuable to have that because you can work through problems. And I know you and I monologue all the time back and forth to each other, and you solve the problems, and it was already in you to find that solution. You just hadn't thought about it out loud. There's a problem, whether it's HR, whether it's whatever, to come up with a solution for that problem. Sometimes it's just bouncing it off people.
Yeah, and that's been one of the
A
more
lot of
helpful
times.
things that you've done for me.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we
But it
been
can't.
at the cellar door and we're all just talking?
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, and I know this happened to all three of us, and then I go home, get into bed, start thinking things
Yep.
through, and then you realize, holy moly,
And you change your mind. You're like,
You
well,
know,
that's a complete an
Scott
aha
said
moment.
this,
Yeah.
Kevin said that, and it's like, oh my gosh, all these little different pieces actually help you compile a solution.
And be as many places, and especially if you're younger, because as the children and the family and all that comes, it's harder to be, but be everywhere all the time is the best way to find that person that can mentor you to the next level. Because if you're at home wallowing in the fact that you can't get to the next level, whoever can help you might be like a block away, hanging out at a coffee shop or at some networking meeting. And there's meetup groups all the time if you can't find enough people. And there's lots of ways, but you need to be in as many places as it's just like advertising, but you're advertising for a mentor, basically.
So what are some of the other, you mentioned there were 5 lessons that you wanted to talk about. What are some of the others?
I have my list over there.
Where'd
I
that list
missed
go?
it. They were just coming up. It's right there. Yep. And we hit on, let's see. I always hate reviewing this in front of you. And we may have hit them all. One of them was about hiring and firing. You can't be afraid to fire. You got to make that step to make your organization better the longer you wait. And big moments come before you're ready. I think we hit them all.
So we hit them all just through the course of the
the
conversation.
big
Sometimes
moments
you're
would
like-
come. Yeah. Okay. You said before you're ready.
Before you're ready.
Yeah, that stinks too.
Yeah, it
man.
does.
I mean, God
It does.
Almighty.
It's like that building. I bought it. I got a steal on it. If it hadn't fallen in the street, I'd be wealthy.
Yeah, you would be here,
it's
huh?
well, it wasn't that big a building, but for that time in my life and for that, it was a great, opportunity, a once in a lifetime deal. And I'm of the adage that once in a lifetime deals, they're not once in a lifetime. They're probably every 3 weeks that something comes up that if you have everything lined up and you have all your people in place and your tools and you're ready to tackle it, they come up every 2-3 weeks.
They do. Good ideas
It,
are just. I always see good ideas always floating around, just floating around all the time.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for your brain to just be ready enough to grasp
Yep.
it, and grab it.
You
and
just
run
need
with
to grab it. I was talking with a friend of ours, Bill, earlier, we were talking about Square and their product where you stick that little white thing on the side of a computer. And wow, if we'd only, I mean, they really didn't invent the wheel. They didn't do anything. All they did was create a package that was better. Now anybody can have it, 2.5%, or it's roughly 2.5%. Anybody, if you want to take it to your house for Girl Scout cookies when they're selling Girl Scout cookies and swipe that. I mean, it's, and now they have a point of sale system that's not complicated. It's not overly thing. It all fits into an iPad.
Yep.
And they didn't create the iPad. They didn't create the card swiper. They didn't do anything. All they did was package it together so that people could use it with ease.
Yep.
So when you guys are in that position where you realize that you've got lightning in a bottle, if you could only harness it, and you feel like you don't have the tools to harness that lightning, what's your move? What's your play? How do you attack that situation?
Eat gags.
I can tell you what I do while you think.
My first step is I get online. I start looking.
I do too.
I start looking because every piece of knowledge that's ever been out there is out there.
It's amazing how many dumb things people say, and they're walking around texting on their phone instead of looking it up. And they're like, "Oh, the world's flat." You could Google that. Come on, it's not flat, But they're over there texting BFFs and LOLs and stuff instead of. But that's not their interest. What do you do?
I read about 5 ebooks on the subject. If you read 5 ebooks, you're going to get maybe 3 kernels of knowledge that you can use. But
I was going to say I have a question for that. It goes back to what you asked me earlier. How do you qualify the book? Because the book's just like a mentor or a person.
Yeah.
Most of them are written by people that have no idea what they're talking about. Real estate ones. Oh, this is how you buy it, and they've never bought a house.
There's a lot of bad ones out there, and that's why I'll take a weekend and I'll just immerse myself in the subject. And then I'll come up with a strategic plan. What you actually taught me how to do, Scott, I'll say, okay, here's the steps I need to take to at least move forward with this idea. Right. I might not know every step that is going to need to be taken, but whether that's hiring somebody to help you or whether that's, usually when I put together my strategic plan for the podcast, step 1 was educate myself.
Find out what a podcast is.
and there was not really a step 2 yet.
Yeah.
But once you do that education, you come up, step 2 is buy the equipment. Step 3 is start recording. Step 4 is get the website going. And you just kind of have to force yourself to move forward, keep moving and in as planned a way as you can and in as educated a way as you can. But if you don't know anyone that's done it before, it's hard to do that.
I've found myself as I've gotten older doing a lot more of that. And the number one thing is to resonate with what you said, is that strategic plan is, because then all you're doing is going through an exercise and it's a process and a pattern to become your own mentor, basically. Because you don't have somebody. Now, if you could go to somebody and go, "Hey, I've never done a podcast. Tony, have you done one?" You go, "Yeah, you need 3 mics and a computer or whatever." Well, if there's nobody out there for it, you're right about the books. But the strategic plan is huge in that you've laid out what you need to know now. Now, whether you learn it and you choose to be the guy to learn that part, or whether you outsource or not, you now know the questions that these mentors hopefully can help you find out as you become mentors or as you find mentors. They know the questions to ask at least. Sure. Well, and that's how you become more. And so I would agree completely. The strategic plan is the most important because you're setting the.
Well, I think the plan is important, but one of the things that you guys do very well. There's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of good information. There's a lot of bad information.
A lot of bad information.
A little bit of good. How about we say it that way?
You know what? The great minds think alike, so
but
it's probably good stuff.
Absolutely, but you got to have that ability to look at something, read it, and just go to and move on, and not. Don't take everything for faith. I mean,
right?
Yeah, that might sound good, but you're gonna have to. You get a good sentence,
right?
A nugget, right, from one of those ebooks. Yep. Validate that nugget before you marry it.
Yeah, and a friend of mine said once, I think, I can't remember where I got it exactly, but they said they looked at it like when you're doing that, like a briefcase or a toolbox. And if you take one little thing and you go to enough of it, you got a full set of tools.
Yep.
If you can take one little, maybe it's a screwdriver, but it's a new type of, you take that and you put it in there and that's what that is taking it. It's really tough there's a lot of bad information. Yeah,
but that's what we're out for. A lot of people, I think, read stuff thinking that they're going to get the whole picture and a whole strategy just kind of thrown at them. No. You're going to have to read 20 books. You'll get 20 pieces of information, and then you got to turn around and put those information together in such a way that you can actually move forward with. And guess what? You're going to need 20 more pieces of information,
Right.
and so on as you get smarter and go through the process.
Yeah, and if it were as easy as just reading a book and then doing it, everybody would do
Jesus,
it. You know,
that's true.
and the books for idiots, I like to start there, but it
Yes.
really gives you no in-depth anything, but it helps you with identifying the questions that you need to, if they're so vague that you know that you need to bridge that gap, and then you find a way, someone or something to do it with. It's interesting. People do think that it's that easy, and again, everybody was doing it. And it reminds me of a story. A neighbor of mine, on one of the first jewelry stores I opened, his wife, they came over for dinner one night. We had them over. They walked to the house, came in, sat down. We were talking about the jewelry store, and she had been by earlier that day. And she's like, I was thinking about that today. I think that's the coolest thing ever. I think I could do that. I mean, all I got to do is buy stuff and sell it. And I'm like, yep,
Right.
you just, that's it. I mean, that's all I'm doing. And there's some truth to that. You're just buying stuff and selling it from a retail perspective. But that's like reading the books for idiots and all that. Well, you buy stuff, you sell it for more. You win. Well, where do you pick the stuff? How do you pick it? What's trending? What's not? What's going to go out of style? How much volume?
I don't know. I do it, and I kind of do it the same way that when I started in the IT business in '92. Those Yellow for Dummies series.
Yeah.
Those things were golden for me, because what it does, the For Dummies series gets you to that first step of just not even knowing, but just knowing that you don't know.
Yeah.
Gets rid of some of the unknown.
Yeah,
exactly.
It just lets you know, okay, I know that I don't know. And then you get another book that's a little heavier.
Right.
And then you start building a skill on it, and on top of it. I've been doing that since '92, and it's worked.
Yeah. And for people that go to college, it's funny, they don't teach you how to run a business, but they do teach you how to build a strategic plan. They just don't know. They don't let you know they're doing that. But you don't have the confidence or anything, because when you go to college, all they do is go take this class, and you're going to have a test. So all they really do is teach you where to find the information. If you took that and used that idea, which is all it is. It's not like you're learning how to be an engineer. You're just learning some math problems and where to find the answers, especially as an attorney. I mean, You come out and you need to go to this program to find that information, because you can't memorize all the stuff that any attorney could do. You may not even practice that specific area.
Well, and I've been thinking this whole conversation reminds me of coming out of law school and starting my law practice. Whether it's from a mentor or from a book, each of those can only maybe provide 10% of the knowledge you need to succeed in whatever you're going to do. You actually have to learn whatever you want to learn from the school of hard knocks. There's going to be 60% that is, or 80% of what you learn is going to be from just taking that first step, doing it, adjusting. Because, even if you have a great mentor, and that's been a common theme in this podcast is trying, failing, adjusting. But even if you have a great mentor, even if they can't put all of their experience into your brain. They can give you some tips. Even if you spend 10 hours with them, there's only so much they can teach you, like a book.
And that's kind of like I said with that higher level club. As you move up, you only get there by just messing it up completely enough times that you've gotten to where you can succeed. And then you get into the club. Whereas when you're young, you think, I've got to do great things. I can never fail. And Kiyosaki said it in one of his books, you got to fail faster. Get out there, mess it up so that you can get to the good product, which is such a true statement.
Yeah, that's a great statement.
Well, Scott, thanks for being here today. Where can, if someone wants to talk to you to either be your mentor or have you be their mentor, how can they reach you?
Email is kssmathis@yahoo.com.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Great
Thanks,
conversation.
Guys. Sure.